Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to go over the top 10 terms you need to know if you want to get involved in government contracting. My name is Nicholas Coriano, went to business school, went to law school, and every Friday I put out a video that hopefully helps entrepreneurs, business owners, private companies, public companies grow and scale their business. And today we're talking about government contracts. So if you ever wanted to be involved in government contracts, today we're going to go over 10 terms you absolutely have to know to be involved or win a government contract. So number one, request for proposal or RFP. You've probably heard this before in the government contracting space. A lot of government agencies, whether they're state, local, or federal, issue RFPs. And what is an RFP? An RFP is a formal document issued by a government agency outlining the project specifications, requirements, evaluation criteria, and submission guidelines for potential contractors to bid on. So that's what an RFP is. It basically says, hey, look, we need this, and these are the criteria that you have to meet to propose this back to us. And that's what an RFP is, okay? It's a formal document that's issued by the government that outlines the project requirements, evaluation criteria, and submission guidelines for potential contractors to bid on, okay? Number two, RFQ, request for quote. This is a solicitation for pricing. This basically is giving contractors the ability, right? Or it basically is when the government asks businesses to provide a price for something, right? So an RFQ is basically saying the government saying, hey, look, we need this object, this service, this product, you give us a price. That's what an RFQ is, okay? And it's typically when the price is a primary factor is when the government does this, right? So if the government says, look, we really need this and we need to know the price, they issue an RFQ and contractors come in and say, we charge this much for social media management, or we charge this much for pencils, or we charge this much for backpacks, or we charge this much for accounting services. Okay, that's RFQ. Number three, RFI also means request for information. This is a preliminary request from the government to gather market intelligence before issuing an official RFP or RFQ. Okay, it's used to assess potential vendors. So an RFI is put out when a government is thinking about putting out an RFP or an RFQ, but they're not there yet. They put out an RFI and say, hey, look, we might be thinking about buying this product or this service. Why don't you give us some information about your company? So we know when we do issue the RFP, we know kind of in the ballpark of where we are. Okay. So RFI, a preliminary request from the government to gather market intelligence before issuing an RFP or an RFQ. The next term you need to know if you're going to get involved in government contracting is NAICS code. NAICS code is short, and I'm going to spell that out so you guys understand what it is. NAICS code. And NAICS stands for North American Industry Classification System. So if you file taxes in America, you probably have already run into this. Basically, a NAICS code is a 6-digit code that classifies businesses based on the type of work that they perform. So every government contractor must identify their NAICS code to qualify for relevant contracts. And usually the way you know this, or the way the tax IRS puts you into a NAICS code, is based on where did you get the majority of your revenue from. And if you just search NAICS code, you'll get to the NAICS code website and you'll fall under one of those classifications. So if you do accounting services, if you're a CNC shop, if you sell ice cream, right, they have classifications, thousands of classifications for every kind of product or service you can imagine. And you need to know yours when you're bidding on government contracts. So NAICS code is number 4. Number 5, SAM.gov. It sounds like a website, but really SAM stands for System for Award Management. Okay, so this is the official government database where businesses must register to be eligible for federal government contracting opportunities. Registration is free, but required for bidding, right? So you can't bid on a government contract unless you're registered for SAM.gov. Now, this is a misnomer for a lot of people because if you go to SAM.gov and you look up a bunch of contracting opportunities and they're all listed on SAM.gov for the federal government, keep in mind, there's local governments, there's state governments, and then there's the federal government, right? Your local and state governments are not going to be on SAM.gov. They're going to be on the state website or on another procurement website. But for federal government opportunities, it's SAM.gov. Keep in mind that sometimes when you find an RFP or an RFI or an RFQ, that's where they're listed. They're listed on SAM.gov. And you read through the RFP, RFQ, RFI. Sometimes it says submit the RFP to this.gov email, right? And it seems like when you read the RFP or RFQ that you don't have to submit it through SAM.gov. That may be true, but you're not eligible unless you have an account on SAM.gov. So go on SAM.gov, go through the process. It's a little bit tedious. If you need help, reach out to me. But you need to get that done before you even start with federal government contracting opportunities. So that's number 5. Number 6 term you need to know when you're involved in government contracting is small business set aside. This is a designation for contracts that are reserved exclusively for small businesses, including 8A businesses, veteran-owned businesses, and woman-owned small businesses. So what happens is the federal government sometimes issues an RFP or an RFQ, and it's designated as a small business set-aside, meaning we want the person winning this contract to be either an 8A business, a veteran-owned business, or a woman-owned business. And they do this for equality purposes and to make sure that everybody has a fair shot at these government contracts. If you're not sure if you qualify for a small business set-aside contract, you probably don't. But generally, it's for small businesses. But just because you're a small business doesn't mean that you qualify. You have to get the designation. So you have to be qualified as an 8A business or a veteran-owned business or a woman-owned small business in order to be qualified for those small business set-asides. But that's what that means. Okay. Number 7, GSA schedule. GSA schedule. This GSA stands for General Services Administration Schedule. Now, this is kind of confusing, but what GSA schedule means is it's a long-term government contract that allows federal agencies to purchase goods or services directly from pre-approved vendors at a pre-negotiated rate. So a GSA schedule is essentially a contract with the government. Doesn't sound like that, right? But it's not a contract like you won something. So the best way to understand this is you want to get approved from the government. By getting approved through the GSA schedule, what happens is, let's say, business plan writing services like what I do, right? Or consulting services like what I do. I can go and get approved through the GSA schedule and say, hey, look, government, after I fill out all the forms, this is who I am, this is where I'm located, this is my cage code, this is my NAICS code, this is my SAM.gov registration number, so on and so forth. These are the services I provide: consulting, business plan writing, marketing, and this is what I charge. $300 an hour, $400 an hour, $500 an hour, whatever the prices are, right? Once the government approves that, you are now on the GSA schedule and you technically have a contract with the government that says, hey, if we need these services, we can come to you and you will charge us these rates. Okay? So it's pre-negotiated. The rates are pre-negotiated and you're already pre-approved. So now when the government agency, whether it's the CIA, FBI, U.S. Army, Department of Homeland Security, any of those government, IRS, any of those government agencies wants to buy something, they go to the GSA schedule and they go, well, this guy has what we need and we think that price is good and we'll hire that guy. So this avoids the whole RFP, RFI, RFQ situation altogether. And they just go right to the approved vendors and buy directly from them. So this is really a shortcut for a lot of people. You want to get on the GSA schedule, but that's what that is. So if you hear the word GSA schedule, that's what it means. It's basically you've been pre-approved by the government as a vendor, and they already have your prices in line. And if they ever need pencils from you or backpacks, they just go and they buy them from you. Okay. Number 8, bid protest. So this rarely comes up, but I wanted to keep this in here. A bid protest is a formal challenge filed by a contractor if they believe that the government contract was awarded unfairly or that the procurement regulations were not followed. So this rarely happens, but every once in a while you hear this term, so I wanted to include that in there. Number 9, past performance evaluation, or PPE, sometimes it's abbreviated. This is an assessment of a contractor's history of successfully completed contracts, used by government agencies to determine the eligibility and competitiveness in bidding. So don't confuse this with just past performance, right? Which is like, hey, this is what we've done in the past. this is an evaluation of past performance. So sometimes in an RFP or an RFI, you'll read that sometimes they give you a rubric which shows, hey, look, we are going to pick the vendor or the contractor based on these 6 criterias, right? Maybe their geography, maybe their past performance evaluation, maybe how specifically they followed the instructions on the RFP, right, and how clear and succinct. Sometimes the pricing is part of their evaluation. But past performance evaluation is exactly what it sounds like. It's basically they're evaluating you based on the past performance of what you've done before bidding on this contract. And usually what they want to see is past performance in other government contract vehicles. Now, I get the question all the time, well, what if we've never done a government contract? Well, you want to show them work that you've done that's similar to the work that they're trying to hire, even if it's not in government contracting. And you want to show them, hey, look, we started this project, we finished this project. It's very similar to the project that you guys need, and we have history of past performance there. So that's number 9. And number 10 is cost plus contract. You're going to hear this term a lot. This is a type of government contract where the agency reimburses the contractor for allowable expenses plus an additional fee or percentage as a profit. So basically here, what happens is on a cost plus contract, is that the government says, hey, look, tell us what this is going to cost you, and then tell us your profit margin. So it's very transparent when you're presenting to the government that, like, look, hey, we want to buy 100 books. Each book is going to cost the contractor $10, and we want 10% on top of that. So the government knows exactly how much your profit margin is. This is not always the case. Sometimes you're just putting in a bid on the, and you say, hey, we want $15 per book. The government doesn't know how much you paid per book, right? But in cost plus contracts, the government knows exactly what you're paying, and they know exactly what the profit margin is. So those are 10 key terms that if you want to get involved in government contracting, you definitely need to know. I hope this was helpful. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and share the video if you thought it was useful. Comment underneath if there's any other terms that you are confused about, and I'll do my best to get back to you. Or if you learned anything about government contracting on your own that you want to share with everybody listening to this video, put it in the comment section below, and I'll catch you next week on the channel.